meeting to order. We're going to start with roll call.
Rob Caruth.
Present.
Derek Gherkin.
Here.
Nancy Hopper.
Here.
Terry Lapp.
Here.
John Prouty.
Here.
Todd Schneider.
Here.
Melissa Smits.
All right, now if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have approval of previous minutes.
Move to approve.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Rob Caruth.
Aye.
Derek Gherkin.
Aye.
Nancy Hopper.
Aye.
Terry Lapp.
Aye.
John Prouty.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
All right, any agenda changes and approval of the agenda?
Move to approve as presented.
I second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Rob Caruth.
Aye.
Derek Gherkin.
Aye.
Nancy Hopper.
Aye.
Terry Lapp.
Aye.
John Prouty.
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
All right, now is opportunity for the audience. Okay. We don't have anybody, so we'll move on to our special presentation for this morning. Mr. Mike Lee.
A couple of different documents I gave you. We'll go through the budget first, and then we'll circle back around onto the comp summary. That's more information, more than anything else. But you have in front of you this year truly a preliminary draft of the district's proposed budget for 2021-22. Kind of a variety of factors in place in the budget drafting this year. One key component of that is just the significantly delayed release of the School Finance Act and what that translates to all the components that were included in the act this year. And I'll try and go through that. And a process that we'll also be doing, and the new CFO will be doing, is working with the individual buildings and departments to draft their detailed presentation of budgets. I've put this together, just a preliminary basis of historical numbers, coupled with the funding from school finance. So we'll roll out those details to the individual buildings and departments for their detailed allocations, and then we'll adjust the spread of the global numbers based on their individual department and building inputs. Go into just a couple highlight funds and maybe go from the back forward, I guess. So if you turn over to page 15. And this is the budget for the building fund, and there's a lot going on in this fund, obviously, relative to our fairly large construction project that's going on at the high school for the secure entry BEST project, as well as the additional scope projects that the board has approved for further improvements to the high school. We also issued a $4.1 million capital lease during the current fiscal year, and we closed on that about in April. So our final presentation of that capital lease is in the estimated column, second column from the right. You see the $4.1 million of the proceeds of that new capital lease. And that not only funds our matching percentage for the Best High School grant, excuse me, but it also covers the additional scope projects that the board has approved for the high school improvements. And then also, the difficulty of this is we're right in the heat of construction of this secure entryway project. That is a effectively April May, June, July, August, September project, and then right in the middle of June 30th, we stopped that. And then we need to divide that activity between what was June 30th and before, which goes in the 2021 budget, and what is July 1 subsequent that goes in the 21-22 budget. So I've tried to project the construction costs and then also include the companion reimbursement that we get from CDE, because that's our capital construction project at the high school is 59 CDE and 41 us on our total contribution. So the line reflecting in the state federal grants is a calculated estimate of what we will hopefully effectively accrue back, because what we've received from the builders is billings through May, and now they've got June, which is a full month of them, no kids in school, their full meal deal in June. We don't even have that those invoices yet, so I've tried to get some preliminary numbers from the contractors of what this might look like for expenses incurred up to June. So I've included those down in the bottom section, and whatever we don't recognize in 2020-21 will roll over into 21-22. And as you can see, when you look at the final budget for 2020-21, we have $1.8 million budgeted. We were going to spend 3.7. This is one of the funds where we'll be approving the supplemental budget, because we were still finalizing all those details in the January process when we were doing the final budget adoption. I'm showing a surplus in the second column from the right, third number from the bottom of the page. That's 1.8 million. That's because we recognize all the revenue from the lease in 2021, and then we split the expenses between 2021 and 21-22. So you can see we have a big surplus in this year, and then we'll have a big deficit next year, but that's just because we're spending off the remaining balance of the capital lease proceeds. Questions about that? If you come back another page to page 14, this is the bond redemption fund. Once again, there's a lot of activity in this particular fund as well. And the main significant change in this is in the second column from the right, which is the excuse me, the proceeds of our refunding bonds of the $7,960,000. We closed those on June 10th, so that was just right before the close of our fiscal year. And these new bond proceeds are going to be with us going forward, and then the proceeds of this bond we sent to the refunding escrow agent, and then they're going to retire the majority of our 2015 bonds. We had some issues of the 15 bonds that were in the non-callable range, so we'll continue to pay those out. And the ones that are actually in the callable area, those are the ones that we've refunded. So we've actually we have not deleted entirely the 2015 debt service, and we have the new bonds coming on, so we'll have a new calculation for total debt activity. You can see in the far right-hand column projected for 2021-22, our total debt service, principal and interest is $2.5 million plus the interest of $4 million, so we're about $2.9 million. And our current debt service is a little over $3 million. So now you're already starting to see in 21-22 the savings that our taxpayers are going to realize, because our total debt service is going down because of the refunding issue. And you can see that just using, we don't have assessed valuation for 21-22 yet, obviously, but using our assessed valuation that we currently operate under, if you look at the far right-hand column, last number on the bottom page, you see our debt service mill levy is going to go from 10.959 down to 10.661, and that translates to the savings that we're going to see on the overall debt service requirements, and the taxpayers will will see that to their property tax notices as well. In the 2020-21 column, you can see the $7.8 million, which is transferred to a bond refunding escrow agent. And they take those monies and invest those in U.S. government securities. And as our 2015 bonds mature, then they carve off a piece of those investment securities and pay those principal and interest obligations for that 2015 issue as they come due. And it's effectively, it's called a defeasance because we've put enough in the escrow to cover the interest and the principal on those 2015 bonds. So they leave our balance sheet, meaning we don't show those anymore. We have a note disclosure in our audit about that, but they leave because we've set aside resources to cover those. So they effectively have been defeased off of our books. And what we see now on our books is the 2021 bond issue. So a lot of activity going on in this fund, but the good news is, as the board had approved this transaction on that sole premise, is we're going to save over $600,000 in financing costs to taxpayers because of that refinancing. And if the board could have shined up their crystal ball a little bit and told me to wait until the 10-year treasury dropped below 1.5 instead of before, so we could have even saved more, but that's a challenge at best to be looking at what U.S. Treasury rates are going to be doing currently as well as going forward. Let's go over to page 11. This fund probably ranks up there. This is the food service fund, or more commonly known as the lunch fund. It's probably got, if not the most, or real close to it, the most activity changes in here. You can see from the top section there all the different components of revenue that we've had in the past, and that's all kind of gone away relative to the operations of food service programs in the COVID environment. Everything has been effectively collapsed into the account code that they call for the summer food program, and all of that funding has been funneled into that. And you can see the 2020-21 column, and probably one of the most profound things is the second line of this worksheet is the meal revenue. You know, we've been clicking off at $200,000 in our total meal revenue for not only adults but student charged meals. And the total of that was $14,000 that we've collected so far because of the whole free program from the federal government. That is in there for 2021, and there was a late night email I saw coming from the CD last night, some new information about some new feeding program stuff coming up. So this is going to be an ongoing process to navigate the actual resources and the overall expense of what happens in the food service program, coupled with the whole summer feeding program that's already going on right now. I show a projected deficit for this year of about 50 grand, and then I show a greater deficit from that for 21-22. And this will just have to be refined as we start to see the full implementation of our feeding programs and the federal dollars and where this all evolves. So this is one we're going to have to keep the board apprised as to how the food service fund is going. We're obviously not transferring any money to the general fund with current deficits working in the lunch fund, but this is one we're going to just have to monitor and see how this goes and what the continual rollout of funding for the food service program comes into play. Page 9 is the CPP fund. And this is also a fund that's definitely kind of in flux, and part of this is just structuring the revenue flow that follows the CPP kids, and then the expenditures related to funding the full operation of the program. And just a brief point of history, our CPP program used to function kind of as in a dual role. We use CPP slots for a portion of the Head Start program. We split our workers with our Head Start preschool program, what we call between Head Start and Head Start CPP. One common worker, but they were doing two different activities and servicing the CPP kids. And our numbers, we had greater numbers of CPP kids, did the new construction, applied for the grant, Head Start awarded somewhere else, and they declined, sent it back to us, and we'd already made strategic plans. So then we declined that offer and then enrolled our all of our preschool resources into CPP. But in the meantime, with the rolling of the daycare there, we actually had space limitations. We just built a new wing addition, had, once again, crystal balling. If we didn't know what was coming, we would have probably done things differently. So we turned back some of our CPP slots. We just didn't have physical room for that many preschoolers. And then as that all changed, we've actually then jumped back into full preschool, and because we didn't have the Head Start component, so we were effectively on CDE's list to get borrowed CPP slots from other districts who actually didn't use them. So we've been in a borrow mode for a couple of years. They've now rolled out additional new slots for us coming forward. So we're just gonna have to navigate and see how that preschool program rolls out, how many physical spaces do we have for CPP kids. As the PPR revenue factor goes up for the general fund, that's where CPP program fund gets its resources. It's a per kid allocation. And so I'm showing that that's going up because of the school financing is going up, and then factoring into the CPP program as well as in the lunch program, I factored in the payroll increase, generally at that 6.25%. Had an increase in our health insurance, plus as the salary goes up, that makes our para go up. So we've definitely seen some increased costs in the preschool program. So I show the general fund actually supplementing the preschool program to kind of get us to a break-even process. And this is a program that's going to be evolving as we look at funding, total kid count, what our actual requested funding count for CPP will be, and integrating that with the workers and staffing and everything that goes into CPP. So I still show them with a minimal reserve. It's not designed to have a significant reserve. It's designed to be spent back in the preschool education program. So this will definitely be another fund that's going to be tracking it as we're going through that and watching. Back one more page to page 8, which is the insurance fund. I left this the same from the transfer to the general fund to cover that. We submitted our applications for our property and casualty insurance to the insurance pool that we're affiliated with. We also got the renewal rates from the workman's comp piece. We had a fairly, well, it was very competitive quote from another enterprise and company doing that, but for the minimal savings that's going on in the workman's comp change, I think it's appropriate that we stick with Pinnacle, which has been now we're in starting year 2 in our workman's comp coverage, and sticking around in year 2 will also qualify us to participate in their dividend program if they have a dividend in the workman's comp pool. And so I left the transfer from the general fund at 800, submitted alternative funding options to the pool, mainly increasing our deductible from $25,000 to $50,000 on a per occurrence. obviously some risk of that. You don't want to do that the day before there's a hailstorm that hits every building in Fort Morgan, including all of our schools, but raising that deductible from 25 to 50 was a premium savings just shy of 50 grand. So I sent out some information to our two board insurance representatives who do that for a living. We had some brief conversations about the trade-off of taking on that additional risk, and taking on that risk when you don't have resources to do it is probably not a good strategy, but I think the district is well reserved to be able to take on that additional risk, and you can always change it. You can always go back to a lower deductible. So your objective as board is have no hail and claims for the next 12 months, and this 50,000 savings would look like a rock star decision. So we'll see how that goes. So you see a reduction in our overall premium, and that also includes our deductibles for our normal things, just the fender benders and things like that occur throughout the process. One wild card in here is, and I've estimated this, and we're going to be over budget in the insurance fund, and it's one of my supplementals that I proposed for the board, but our unemployment insurance is pretty significant, and unfortunately we don't even have the quarter ended today any idea what that's going to be. So I've projected that increase in here. We'll see how that goes, and I'm hoping we don't see some large block of uninsurance claim, and the district is on a claims made basis, so we just don't pay the premium and we're done. Like most private businesses, they pay the premium and they're finished, you know, and then once claims come on, the unemployment fund takes care of those. We don't actually pay a premium, we pay a cost based on claims made and estimation. So when a claim hits, we actually get an assessment for that unemployment claim. So Brian's always kind of overseeing and following that unemployment thing, and the state has just been, lack of a better word, I guess, Brian, give me your thoughts, but horrible. Their communication, their timing of their notification of our claims has been way behind. Teresa just gave me the claim sheet for the first quarter of 2021. We just got that end of last week, I think. So that makes our budgeting for that process look a little strange, to say the least. So the workman's comp, and I've factored in the workman's comp is a premium assessed on per $100 of compensation, and we have now proposed and worked through in the budget a compensation increase. So that's going to have more dollars of compensation, which means more $100 units of payroll. So our workman's comp premium is going to go up beyond the quote, just because we have more payroll dollars that are going to roll into this, assuming the board approves that whole process. So I've increased the workman's comp to cover that, and we also had included in here is our deductible for our workman's comp claims, similar to the property and casualty. We have to pay the first dollar cost for our workman's comp claims as well. And just some normal repair and claim service activity that goes on, fixing our bumps and bruises and claims through the workman's comp process. One thing that the pool did do in the property and casualty, geez, I've already used my time. Is that there was additional coverage they're offering, and I submitted the application. They have improved that, and that is a communicable disease coverage. So we've got that coverage in place now for 2021-22 as part of our property and casualty pool. Let's hope we never have to go through that again, but it's coverage is probably appropriate if there's some spreading of communicable diseases within our school buildings. So I'm gonna run over to real quickly to page 6, that's daycare. This is another fund that is gonna just have to be monitored. We had a presentation from our daycare team parent coordinator, Esther Cooley, I believe it was last meeting, and we're consolidating the teen parent program into the daycare fund, and she's gonna be overseeing, and has been overseeing, both those operations. And we're just gonna have to translate and monitor all this to see the combined fee structure, not only daycare, the teen parent side, and or not necessarily teen parents, but other parents with kids in the infant program. So it's nothing really unusual here. I'm showing a little projected loss. Part of that, once again, is additional compensation rolling into 2021-22. Let's go over to the general fund, and if you'll go over to page 3, spend the last couple minutes going through the general fund. I'd shared with the board a few weeks ago some just real preliminary thoughts that I had on what this fund was going to look like and with the school finance, and it's not materially different than what my first impression is. There's just been a lot of dollars moving around through the various legislative actions and things. You can see in the middle section, middle of the page on page 3, there's a whole bunch of numbers in the second column from the right, and there's only 2 numbers in the far right-hand column, and that's the 2 numbers where our special ed director, Lisa Meagle, lives in the IDA Part B and the Part B preschool. I've taken out all the COVID funding and all the dollars related to the COVID funding. Theoretically, those are not rolling into 21-22. That's kind of a done component. You do see a tick up in property tax, very first line, far right-hand column, $7.9 million versus proposed $8.5 million, as we continually see an escalation in property tax rates and or assessed valuations based on fair market value increases. The interesting piece of this is that it doesn't really initially affect RE3, and I've shared this with the board, but we're at the full funding of the 27 mills, and Randy, being the school expert he is, he can opine on this probably way better than I can, but the Supreme Court ruling on the Mesa County temporary property tax credits, and as I'm reading that, at least on a preliminary basis, there's going to be a ratcheting up of those below 27 mil districts, and where they've been getting a temporary credit back for that, so they're not paying at the same rate that we are. And my understanding that that's going to be continually now going up as that gets assessed across the state. More local contribution, what does that do for the state share of resources they have? Does that immediately come back to us, or does that just get reallocated? As we see how this all evolves, that'll be interesting to follow that whole process through. If you look down in the bottom section of the worksheet, this is the state sources, and there's a lot of activity here. You see in the state equalization, we went from 17,556,000, second column from the right, to the far right-hand column, which is our proposed state equalization for next year of 19,592, and that 19,592 is based on our projected pupil count. State has us with quite a few more kids than what we're thinking we're going to have. So if by some reason our attendance kicks back up and we do have kids back in the school building, this is definitely going to have an impact. It would be a positive impact. Hopefully what we have here is a conservative estimate of what our pupil count is going to be for 21-22. But if you'll notice the next line, that's the state equalization pupil mitigation. We got an additional $800,000 for the loss of pupils because we exceeded the state's. They had some benchmark calculations as to what you had to have to suffer pupil losses to get this additional funding. We qualify for that, so we got an additional $800,000. Well, that obviously goes away for 2021-22. And the other piece that has a pretty material effect in our ELL director, Shelley O'Connor, as she's staring at her computer over the top of me, she sees her number is cut from almost 500,000 down to just about 200,000. But my understanding of the new weighting factor that goes into School Finance Act for the ELL and at-risk students, we're getting funding that's a component of that 19 million. Shelley gets her main ELPA grant, but the PD portion of the ELPA grant goes away. Once again, the name on the top of this doc is preliminary budget, so hopefully Shelley's over there nodding affirmably, yeah, that's my understanding as well. But from my sitting in on the CD meetings and physically asking them, they're saying that the PD component of Shelley's budget is gone, so that's like a $260,000 reduction. Does that sound right, Shelley? Yeah. Okay. So that's will just be more tasks at hand for Shelley, but we're going to just effectively be earmarking state equalization resources that are now part of the funding program that'll be part of what Shelley will roll out in her operating budget for her program and department. But you can see the significant jump from our projected budget of 31 million to the actual ending number because of the COVID dollars, and then you see an immediate reversal of that into 21-22 for the non-repeat of the COVID dollars. So we've shrunk those resources back, even though state equalization is up significantly. We're actually going backwards in revenue because this is the significant federal dollars we had coming in. So to the meat of things, I guess, if you go to page 1, which is the general fund, and this is far right-hand column is 21-22. There's the 31,903 of projected revenue. And then here's the expenditures that I see is probably materially representing what's going to be looking like for 2021-22. This does include a compensation increase. It does include our health insurance increase, which we already knew about. It does include the para increase just attributable to the more dollars. I mean, para is a function of a percentage of total compensation. So as the comp goes up, so does the para. The other expenses are pretty comparable in supplies and material. Don't see a lot of change there. The purchase services is definitely going to come down. And this is attributable to roughly about that $500,000 that we expended to get all of the one-to-one not the one-to-one devices, but the Edgenuity software, the guiding component for the remote learning process, which was funded by COVID dollars, but we won't have those expenses to that extent going forward. You see in the capital outlay line a pretty significant increase there. And one of the things that we have received in our funding, in our total revenue, is the rural sustainability monies coming through. We had 400 and some thousand in 2021, and we have an additional 500,000 in 2021-22. And I have shown those as being all expended. Haven't seen all the final information about that, but the initial funding rules were fairly liberal about that, as long as we're spending it for specific direct related education kinds of things, and capital is a qualified inclusion in there. School buses will be part of that. So I'm just envisioning that we're gonna, for that, the 400 we just got, and then the 500 for next year that we're gonna get, I'm just proposing that we're probably going to spend all of that. Potential trade-off for the board's consideration with that in mind, there's a possibility that maybe you don't put the full 519,000 to cap reserve for 21-22. Because if we're earmarking a good portion of that rural sustainability money for capital, we may not need that full transfer to the cap reserve fund. It's not like we don't have a lot of capital needs. They seem to be crawling out of the woodwork as we go, and they're not cheap. Every time we have some kind of a capital replacement, there's an extra zero on the end of that. But that could be a consideration that the board, as we evolve this budget over the process of the year, see all the things we want to do, look at the bus pricing, all of our capital needs. That may be an avenue where we can lighten up a little expense on the general fund. The other item in here is other, and included in that is the debt service. We have our, of course, we have for 2021 and also for 21-22 the full annual cost of our $3 million lease that we did to buy out Head Start interest in our wing addition at Sherman. That's already been included in here. But what you see in the far right-hand column under 21-22, we have the increase now to include the full principal and interest debt service on the $4.1 million that we just issued in April to pay for our matching grant for the high school secure entryway and the additional scope projects. So we're going to see the full cost of that, and that is just a general fund cost obligation. So you can see from the second column from the right, about a little below halfway down, our total change in surplus for the general fund for 2020-21. I'm estimating that we're going to be about $2 million surplus. A big piece of that is the $2 million of stimulus money that we got that was effectively a compensation reimbursement for the general fund, less the $500,000 Shelley had to expend to get all our students up to connectivity with the software that was acquired. So with a $2 million surplus and a beginning fund balance of $8 million, it takes us to $10 million, which is a number I shared with the board. So we're going to end this year, my projection, with about a $10 million surplus, fund balance for the general fund at the end of, 5 o'clock today. This is my guess. And if you roll that over to the next column with the effectively reduced revenues but increased cost, including that full expending of the capital, I'm showing that we'll have about a $500,000 deficit for 2021-22. So you can just see the immediate effect of deficit funding for operations. It just is a whittling away of your fund balance. So our $10 million of fund balance NME drops down to $9 million for. Long term, if you take that far right-hand column where you see that $9 million for, just scan to the left and you can see where our fund balance, we've been in the $8 million range. So if everything else being equal, and if we keep at this pace of this $500,000, we've got some years before we would get down to the point of being at our fund balance level in our prior years, and quite a few years before we get down to that minimum threshold of $6 million roughly that the board established many years ago. But that's definitely a number we're going to want to monitor and make sure that is a managed number and it doesn't deteriorate or get significantly worse, because we're effectively spending dollars out of our accumulated savings account, which was artificially increased in 2021 because of all the COVID activity. Now we're seeing a reduction in that. So this will be an ongoing thing the board's going to want to monitor and see how that as we roll forward into future years. The other worksheet that I had is just a quick snapshot of compensation and what I'm seeing what will be for 2021. And this is looking at the cash method of this actual pay when I do the full accrual. So I actually get July and August and bring those back, and I get rid of July and August of the prior year because it was actually for services rendered prior to that. But those are normally pretty comparable numbers. And then the 21-22, this is my calculations is based on actual payroll Brian and Teresa will be putting together their full employment projections with all the compensation changes that would be in the queue, as well as all the position changes. And history will show us that the actual compensation is less than our full employment. We have a hard time achieving that. But I'm showing a projected deficit of $500,000 based on actual payroll. If we when we layer in the full employment picture for admin, certified, and classified, that deficit is definitely going to go up. And then every month, we'll be tracking our realization of actual expenditures to budget expenditures, and that's that 1.5% number. But on $20 million, that makes quite a bit of difference. So we'll just have to monitor that. But once we get the full rollout of all the worker base for 21, 22, you can see what the impact of it is, and then we'll immediately start tracking that. This is what we think it's going to be, and this is what we've actually achieved. I left the other pay just where it was. The two biggest components of that are our substitute and our stipend pay. Stipend pay, I don't see that changing a whole lot, but the substitute pay, that's really out of our control. That's someone's sick, they have other scheduled time off, and it requires a sub to come on board. So with that in mind, you'll just have to see that. And I rolled in the benefits and included our health insurance increase, and I've provided some percentages on the right-hand side there, that as well as the benefits, and just some summary numbers. So 15 over, sorry. Any questions, or focus on the word preliminary budget? Board has lots of opportunities to refine and modify, and as we see the full impact of all the activity that was going on in the legislature and the changes made, as well as our compensation packages, those roll out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? Everybody good? All right, thank you. Now we'll move on to our consent agenda. There's the personnel action report there. If we can get approval of consent agenda.
I so move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
All right, now our action items. Action item A is to approve the appropriating resolution to adopt the 2021-2022 preliminary budget.
Move to adopt.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Roll call.
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay.
Just for clarification, I see an error in this document. If you look at that, it says total 2021 budget, that's 21-22, so I'll make that formal change for Bev before the signature comes for the board.
Sure. Okay, item B is to adopt the resolution to approve spending funds from the beginning fund balance.
I so move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just a comment, this is the most significant one, is general fund. That, and very first line on that thing is you're proposing to spend $578,000 of fund balance. This is the new legislative ploy where the board can't say 3 months from now, well, I didn't know that. Not that this board would say that, but that's the purpose of this document, is you're now kind of on record that you know that you're spending part of your fund balance to cover ongoing operational costs. So
Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Roll call?
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
All right, action item C is to approve the 2020-2021 supplemental budget.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
The biggest two items on there, if you look at the last two, is the bond redemption fund and the building fund. That's the new refinancing bonds that were done to save our taxpayers mill levy assessments on their bond redemption piece of our mill levy to them, and then also the ongoing construction costs for the high school retrofit project.
All right, roll call?
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay, action item D is to approve the 2021-2022 school handbooks and course description and planning guide for the high school, Lincoln Children's Center, and the gifted and talented.
I so move. To approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call?
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay, action item E is to, for the additional language for the 2021-2022 school handbooks. For ELL, we had to add in that sentence there into every handbook.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just have a question. What if it's a language and we have no resource to, we do our best to provide, right? That's what we're saying, okay.
I think this year, one of the things that I'm going to have to do, because it's been such a nightmare over the last couple of years, is contract with an outside company that has almost every language that we can, you know, do. And I had to add this in. This was an Office of Civil Rights request. So it's a little more than I would have liked to have added. I would have liked to have said something like top 5 languages, but that's not how the request was presented to me, so.
And do you know what the approximate cost to that program?
I do not. I've really tried to go the more fiscal route, you know, and still provide. Also, when we get local translators, families tend to be more comfortable. So, I mean, there's both reasons to kind of go that way. But I find somebody, they're really great, they translate for me, and then the next time I try to contact, you know how it goes. I mean, you know, especially bad. So I just really think that having someone maybe that we don't have to pay like on a monthly basis if that's not fiscally responsible. So as I kind of research that, and I want to really talk to some other districts and see some smaller districts that are kind of like us that don't have the resources that some of the big districts who have the diversity that we do have, and see what they're doing to try to figure this out. And that's kind of where I think I'm going to have to go this year. So yeah.
Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, roll call?
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay, and then action item F is to approve the extensions of the memo of understanding with MASAP and the agreements with FMEA and ACP for the 2020-2021 school year.
I move to approve. Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I just want to apologize to the group, so we're still working on this. We're going to get it taken care of.
Yes, hopefully very soon. Agreed. All right, roll call?
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay, for our advanced planning, the next regular meetings for the summer are July 19th and August 16th. And our first day of the school year for 2021-22 is Thursday, August 19th. And now we would like to have executive session according to CRS 24-6-402, subsection 4, subsection B, for legal advice, board to conference with an attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific matters, board policy and governance. And we would like to invite with the board Dr. Randy Miller and Mr. John Farrow, our attorney with Simple Farrington.
You need a motion? I so move.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Rob Caruth,
Aye.
Derek Gerken,
Aye.
Nancy Hopper,
Aye.
Terry Lapp,
Aye.
John Proudy,
Aye.
Todd Schneider.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll just be moving in over here to the table for telephone.
And I just have one quick clerical matter, Terry, to give the boards a heads up, is, and Brian and I haven't had a chance to discuss this, but with the new sick leave by hour rule that we're starting to try and get into place, it appears that we're not going to be able to navigate through our electronic employee portal system to where sick leave is taken off on an hourly basis, but then the discretionary personal leave and the vacation day is taken off in half days and whole days. So it looks like we're going to probably need to commit to an hourly calculation for that. That's not really a policy issue, but it's more of a, could be a clarification in the two, three agreements that you're contemplating. It looks like we're going to, give me your thoughts on this, Brian, but it looks like we're going to probably need to convert that leave utilization on the discretionary and the vacation to an hourly basis, just to logistically try and keep track of this. Any other thoughts, Brian, or?
Yeah, no, I mean, I need to take a look at the system and see how those agreements are written. But that makes sense to me, that, you know, we're doing it one way for sick, probably we'll have to handle it the same way for discretionary.
And we're still exploring that with our software vendor, but it looks like that may be trying to do it two different ways with the same system, and that may not logistically be doable. So we may have to default. The one is a law, the other ones are not. So we may have to default to following the Colorado hourly leave calculation. That may impact our discretionary leave. So just so the board's aware of that, we'll keep you apprised of how that goes.